Welcome back to the Nitty Gritty. We're here with a very special guest. How many relatives have been on this show for me? How many? 3? 4?
17.
17. So this is our 17th.
But who's counting? Seriously, 17?
No, I have no idea.
Just a few. But my uncle Blair Treu is with us today. Film producer, director,
Hollywood
massage
star.
therapist, pickleball star, stunt man.
Hey, I'm just thrilled to be on hallowed ground here at the famous barbecue place in all of barbecue-dom. How do you say that?
I don't know.
I just make
barbecue. I don't really know words.
But Bam Bam's is a special place. I just came for a free meal. Is that
for sure?
You do get a
part of the
meal.
deal?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's how we get most guests.
It's a pretty significant enticement.
It is. I agree. Well, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Well, thanks for having me.
We've actually wanted to have Blair in here for a while, and he is my most famous relative.
That can't be true.
That is true.
No,
isn't it
can't
true?
Be true?
Hold on, let's think.
I don't know all your relatives.
Wasn't there a True that played in the NFL?
Yeah, played for the Raiders, but I think he's one of Bill's.
Yeah, well, he's got to be. Well, Bill True.
300. Not Bill. Who's great grandpa? One that had lots of kids.
So how are you guys related? Uncle.
Yep. Okay. He's my uncle. He's my dad's little brother.
Yep.
And we hang out quite a bit.
We do.
Golf quite a bit. Now we play pickleball together. We just played this morning and yesterday morning and the day before.
And Cam coaches me. He's really kind.
We switch pretty much every game, but we won some games.
So do you have as many paddles as Cam does?
No. I can answer that without even knowing how many paddles.
It's funny you say that. He texted me 3 days ago. He goes, hey, your dad said that, because he's shopping for a paddle. And he goes, your dad said that you've got some paddles that I could maybe try out. Like, would you mind bringing some? And I bring him my whole bag, and I just lay out 5. I'm like, here you go. Here's all my old paddles from the last 4 months.
That's great, though. After that, I ordered one. So
yeah, but then he ordered my current one. He liked my current one the best. Just
that's why it's your current one.
Totally right. It is my November paddle. So I'm very excited about it. But no, it's fun. But it's funny. Every time we're together, I tend to get new stories from Uncle Blair. It's going to be hard for me not to call you Uncle Blair, because my dad used to strike me if I was not respectful.
Really?
Oh, well, yeah, probably.
Wow.
Probably. But I'll try not to call you Uncle Blair.
And some of the stories might be true. Let's just go with that.
We'll find out. So most recently, you do a lot of your film work with, a director is the title that you're most well known for, right?
That's
director.
Yeah.
So, but you most recently worked for the church, LDS Church.
Yeah.
Hold on. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, of course.
That's right. We used to say on my mission, we were Michigan, I served in Detroit. So we used to say we're Michigan Mormonaries from the Church of Cheese and Rice of Rattle Day Snakes. Just as an icebreaker,
Wow. It's impressive you remember that.
Is that going to get me in trouble?
Right off
no.
That's probably going to get me in trouble, you guys. Oh, my God.
Listen, isn't it like BYU head coach? Like, there can't be that many card-carrying, feature film directors out there, right?
That are still card-carrying? You're probably right. We do have a tendency to go wayward. That's kind of the MO.
So I want to learn a little bit more about how you got going before we jump into kind of what you're doing. So how did it all begin? How did even the idea, where did the desire start from?
I think, I was thinking, I get asked that, and it's been hard to answer that, so I've given it some thought, knowing that you might ask me that. And I remember a specific moment in time. It wasn't that I knew in that moment, I want to be a film director, but it was, you have moments in your life where there's moments of influence. And so for me, I was probably 7 or 8 years old. I was playing with some cousins or whatever, and there was a pile of toys down in the basement. It was an unfinished basement, concrete and everything. And there was this one particular toy that caught my interest. It was this one, I picked it up, and you put it up to your eyes, and you just twist the handle, you crank it, and it was like a 1-minute animated cartoon. But you could play it forward or backwards. You could play it slow or fast. And I was just
the crank.
Yeah, and I was fascinated by the idea that a series of stills in rapid succession could create the illusion of motion.
Wow.
So it was animation.
Okay.
I didn't even know what animation was. But that's what now in retrospect, I look back, that's what caught my interest. And so I was fascinated with that. I'd go slow and forward and backward. This is really incredible. And so I started it just remained with me. And then I don't know
Were you very artistic growing up? Like, were you creating?
I used to draw a little bit. I wasn't very good.
Okay.
But I drew and things like that. And my dad would bring home my dad was a hospital administrator, and he would bring home these notepads left from vendors. These were guys that supplied his food or supplied hospital beds or whatever. I remember he brought home one that was from some company that supplied these adjustable hospital beds. And it's down in the corner of a notepad. And so I created this little stick figure character that would jump up and down on this hospital
By
bed.
like flipping the book?
Yeah, you just flip through the pages.
Yeah.
And he had, a head, arms, legs, toes. And he would jump up and down. And with each successive cartoon that I drew, became more and more elaborate. And eventually, it was just harmless fun, right? My family didn't think much of it. But they would pick up these notebooks. Scott, my older brother, Cam's dad, he's got 4.5 years on me. He'd pick up this and he'd start flipping through it and he'd chuckle and he'd laugh. And it made me, I thought, oh, this is cool. I made him laugh. Something I drew made somebody laugh. And I think
That's not easy to do with Scott Treu.
Yeah.
You got to work for it.
Did he laugh at you a lot? No, he didn't? Or you tried?
Yeah. I mean, he laughed at me at my failures, maybe. But no, I'm just kidding.
No, he was a good dad.
No, he's awesome.
And you were a good kid. I know you like to maybe pretend otherwise, but you were a good kid.
I was a good kid. Thank you,
You were.
Uncle Blair.
And you were amazing with a hockey stick in the street, by the way.
Those were the days.
But what was cool is I graduated, and this is a big deal. I graduated to the LA County phone book. Okay?
Oh, you made
It's 4 inches
animations.
thick.
Gonna say.
And then the Orange County phone book. We had both in our house. Okay. I know that your listeners probably, what's a phone book, right? You do everything you look it up online.
Our listeners probably know what phone books are still, right?
Yeah.
So a phone book is, a list of all the numbers of everybody, all the listed numbers. And it's really thick. And the pages are pretty thin. And so I would flip through those and I would create like these feature length 10-minute cartoons. It would take me
thousands of pages.
Yeah, it would take me a week to do one. And when you got when you finished flipping side A, you'd turn the phone book over and flip to side B.
It'd be an Instagram account.
Oh, yeah.
People would be all over that.
It's called stop motion.
I would
yeah,
give,
that's what I'm saying.
literally, I'm not kidding. I would give $10,000 if I could have just one of those back. I don't know what happened.
Oh, man.
But they would be scenes of and they'd be detailed. There would be cuts, there'd be scenes.
It's like it wasn't just a stick figure.
It was stick figures, but they were detailed. Like I would do baseball scenes. Like I'd have the batter, swinging the bat, getting ready. And then the pitcher, we'd cut to the pitcher getting ready for his windup. Then he'd throw, and then it would be close up on the ball, spinning through the air. And then the guy would hit it, and you cut to the outfielder running, and he'd crash through the fence.
And you were how old?
Like 10.
Wow.
Maybe 10, 11. But I had no interest in movies at that point. It was just something that I did for fun. Dang. And everybody thought, this kid's twisted. I mean, the only thing that could the only thing that would keep me sitting was that. I was lousy at school. In high school, I had a good solid GPA of probably 2.0 at Marina High School. I'm very proud of that. It's amazing I even got
It's enough
to college.
to stay on the tennis team.
Yeah, well, the tennis team, we had 140 kids on the tennis team.
Oh, my
It was a big school. We were bigger than Rick's College.
That's a big tennis team.
That's where I was supposed to go to high school until my
It's
parents
so
ruined everything. It looks like a prison.
It does, has a moat around it.
Yeah, it does. It really
it's
does.
A big flood
high
control.
school?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was weird. It had just this.
Why?
It wasn't.
That's just the way it worked
Yeah.
out. In fact,
Just
on
storm
senior
drain
prank day, we stacked up all of the, the parking, those little concrete parking header stalls, whatever
Right.
that you bump up next
Yeah.
to. We had a tool that could rip up the
rebar.
the rebar.
Yeah.
And we'd lift those and we stacked them up on the bridge and nobody could get into school.
That
Now,
would be a lot of work.
Honestly, I mostly watched because I was kind of a scrawny kid and I mostly watched. I didn't have the strength.
You were
to lift
directing.
those.
You were just telling them what to
That's
do,
right.
where to go.
Yeah. I won't take credit for that, but I was there and I didn't report it. I should have.
It's a better story now that you didn't. So,
Yeah.
It's very true.
so you were 10, you started doing phone books.
Yeah. So it just became kind of more of a scientific. I was interested in, and then it became one of, hey, you're telling stories. and that's what film is storytelling. And when films are well done and they tell a story well, they can move people, for better or for worse, they can move people. So, but still, I didn't have any inkling of that at that point. It was just an interest, and it became, I saved up, and my dad helped me pay for a little Bell & Howell Super 8 movie camera. And I don't know if you ever saw, did you guys ever see the movie Lords of Dogtown?
Oh,
Lords.
Of course.
Okay, so that was where I met, I actually worked with some of the cast on that, but anyway, in a later film. But at that point, that takes place as I remember, it takes place in like Santa Monica and Venice.
Yeah, Venice, yeah.
But it's spilled over into Huntington at that point. And so when I was a kid, I had a skateboard with steel wheels and then clay wheels, and then urethane came in, and it completely revolutionized everything. Well, this is the birthplace of like skateboarding and BMX biking, and I was right in the middle of that. So I filmed my friends who were much better at all that stuff than I was. I was just pretty good with the camera. I did it, and I was okay, but they'd jump over the top of me, and we'd create these, these little music videos before music videos were a thing. I'd put on like Chicago or whatever, and I would actually cut the film in my bedroom to the record.
How did you know how to do this?
I just discovered.
YouTube.
But that's what I was going to say. There's not so many of our guests have been like, oh yeah, I just YouTube stuff like that.
Well, no, there was no.
That's not how that worked.
We remember this is before internet.
Yeah.
This is before Al Gore. And so we didn't have internet. Sorry. We didn't have internet. We didn't have cell phones. And the first cell phone I ever possessed was when I was in college.
Yeah.
So,
but that's what I'm saying. Like as a young kid, how did you even know how to use the camera, let alone come up with this idea that we're going to cut? And I mean,
the Encyclopedia Britannica.
No, but I'm serious. Like, how did you learn?
Just trial and error.
Was it because were your parents teaching you?
Well, I remember seeing some films. I used to go down to the Huntington Beach Public Library, and you could check out a 16 millimeter print of Endless Summer.
Wow.
Or any of the current, this is just pre-Warren Miller, right? You could check out a ski movie or a surf movie, and you could rent the projector, and you'd take it home. I used to actually go down and rent the projector. I'd carry it on my little banana Stingray bike, and I'd carry the projector on my left with the reel under my arm, one hand on the, on the handlebars, and I would take that projector home with whatever films, and I would charge the kids in my neighborhood a nickel to come in and see the movie. And then that would pay for my rental. Okay. And then I would run it forward. I would run it backwards. And I was just fascinated and I would learn by just watching the movies. And so it was mostly just action stuff. But again, at that point, I didn't want to be a filmmaker. I didn't really have any inkling of that until after my mission.
It's so weird that there's no inkling of that when you're splicing film.
Yeah.
Well, it was just something I did for fun.
Movies.
I know. I should have been an exhibitor. Funny? I should have been like the next AMC, right?
But
what happened?
Yeah. Well,
what happened?
I guess that's true, though. I mean, maybe that's how. Because with barbecue, it was the same way. Like for the first 3 or 4 years, it's not like I wanted to be a restaurateur. You know what I mean?
Well,
like I just loved barbecuing.
And Betsy just wanted better bedding for. You know what I mean? Like that's how it all starts.
And maybe that's the best way to do it, because when you're doing something because it's just fun and you love it.
Well, I've heard many artists say the best way to film composers say the best way to ruin a kid is put him in art school.
Yeah,
let him explore, him or her.
Isn't that art? Freedom of expression.
Yeah, I mean you've gotta let until it graduates to something more profound or something more meaningful. Where I can actually. I mean, it didn't even dawn on me until I was a business major in college, and failing at it, by the way. And I encountered the films, the BYU had a film studio out in the back lot, and I went out there, and it all changed literally. Now, I say it all changed in one day. It was really set up by decades of experiences. But I went out to the BYU film studios, and a guy by the name of Robert Stum, who was the director of photography out there, he had shot like The Mailbox and The Phone Call. These are films you're looking at me like, whoa, what are these? But these are the old black and white movies that
Mailbox, like the things you hit with the bat.
You feel them blowing up.
You should watch these if you can, because they're really pretty funny. I mean, now we laugh at them, right? But or Johnny Lingo. Okay, he shot Johnny Lingo.
Okay,
now you're talking.
That's right. Everybody's heard of Johnny Lingo.
That's right.
Well, Bob Stum took me on a tour of the studio. I'm just this young freshman student. I'm not even a film student. And he took time out of his schedule to take me on a tour. And I went back onto the lot on the sound stage, and there was some students shooting a scene. And I watched what they were doing. And without knowing any of the terminology, I instinctively knew what they were doing.
Because you've been doing it.
I'd been doing it. In fact, they were shooting a scene incorrectly. They were doing they were crossing the line. If you and I are facing each other, right?
Yeah.
And if we're going to shoot a scene, if I'm going to shoot a scene of this, I might shoot a wide shot that has each of us from profile, right? Or I might shoot, and then I might have another angle that's over my left shoulder facing you, and then over your right shoulder facing me, so that we're looking at each other. Well, if I shoot the scene over my left shoulder, and then I come to the other side of the line and shoot over your left shoulder, it's crossing the line. We're not even looking at each other. People don't think about that. The simplest way to describe that is if you're at a parade and you film the parade going left to right, and then halfway through the parade you cross the street. Now the parade's going right to left. Okay? That's called crossing the line. It's a little thing. It's something that can be very confusing in a chase scene if you're not mindful of that. So they were shooting the scene, and I realized they're crossing the line. I didn't know what the terminology was.
I was going to say, did you know what that was called?
I said to the perceived instructor, I said, well, this isn't going to cut together because they're not going to be looking at each other. And they said, oh, you know what? That's actually right.
Wow.
And this was just a freshman class. So again, I didn't know anything. I really didn't know anything about filmmaking, but I realized in that moment, wow, people make movies, they make commercials, they make documentaries, and they make a living doing this. This is what I have to do. And I literally called my dad that night. So I'm changing my major from business to film. And he freaked out just a little, not a lot. I mean, he really was generally pretty supportive, but and then I got enrolled and I didn't waste any. I sold my car. He loaned me like $1,500. I sold my rundown Camaro and I raised enough money to make my first student film, and I got lucky and sold it and paid for my education. It's like, wow, how does this happen?
What?
Dang.
Hold on.
I didn't know that story.
You raised money to do a film.
Yeah. It was $2,800.
Was this happening?
My Camaro wasn't worth much, obviously.
But like, was this happening? Like, was that, once again, had you seen someone else do this? Like, how did you have the idea? Because you hadn't even been in film.
Well, I was thinking back on those little short films that I had rented from the public library. And I thought, somebody has to make those, right? I wasn't thinking major films. Like, I wasn't thinking, ooh, I'm going to make a major feature film that's going to play in the movies. I just want to make, like, wouldn't it be cool to go around and shoot surfers and make like The Endless Summer? Yeah. That can't be that hard, right? That's what I was thinking as a
okay. So what was the film that you did? Again, luckily I was so naive I didn't know that I couldn't write. I know that sounds really funny because I later worked at, it led me to Disney where I oversaw script coverage where we had 150 scripts a week, right? Jeez. From real writers that were represented by agents. I never had an agent. I was never a writer like that, but I didn't know that I couldn't do it. So I just did it. So I wrote this story. I don't know how detailed to go, but it was, I thought, well, I'm at BYU. It should have a film that's, I feel strongly that film should uplift and should have some, beyond just entertainment value, they should have something to say that's positive, or else what's the point? It's just commerce at that point. Yeah. Nothing wrong with commerce. I mean, I'm a capitalist as much as anybody, but if it's just about the money, do something else. Yeah.
When you have people, in the dark and you kind of, in a sense, you kind of own them for a while, as long as you've got them captive.
Sure.
You have responsibility to say something positive, I think.
Okay.
That's just my opinion. Not everybody feels that way, but anyway, so I diverged. So that film was about, it was called Others. I look at it now, I mean, I can't even watch it now because it's so like over the top silly. But remember, this is 40 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an old fart here, guys. So, and it was about, it's about the concept. And I'd heard one of the kids in my ward gave a little, we used to call them 2.5 minute talks, right? And they talked about the concept of joy, Jesus, others, and yourself. That's if you live life in that order. And I wish that I could. Okay. Sometimes I do, but
what order do you live your life in?
Well, I'm kind of probably just how would you say it backwards? George.
George?
Yeah. I'm more of a Yodge
Say
guy.
you.
But when you
Like
do,
me, myself, and I, Jesus.
Meej.
so that was the concept, and it was just a simple story about. Should I go into the story? I mean, I can if you want, but I don't know.
Well,
I think it'd be cool.
We can do it. We can always cut it out later.
Right. Just a little background. I think it'd be awesome.
So it starts with this guy who's a machinist. He's out of work. He's been out of work for 3 months. And the opening scene, he comes home to his wife, and we learn that she's been taking in laundry. She's got like 55 lines with laundry on them out in the back, and she's taking in laundry at a bucket, whatever she can get. And they have this little dialogue and establishes that no luck hunting for a job today. And in the middle of that, they're interrupted by a little girl who comes home from school. And we don't know where she goes to school. It's some type of parochial school. So I made the film so that it would be attractive to Catholics, Protestant, Jews, Mormons. And that's what ultimately made it successful, because it wasn't just an LDS or Mormon or centric film. It was something that anybody that had any Christian, even if you weren't Christian, you could find something in it. And she comes home and she's had this little drawing, and it says J-O-Y, Jesus, others, yourself. And she says, "Oh, that's cute, honey." And they kind of pat her on the head, and send her on her way. And she says, "Now, Mrs. Hanson made me promise to put this somewhere where we'd always see it." "Okay, that's great." And they kind of dismiss her. They've got bigger problems to worry about, right? So he gets a call that night from his friend Ross, and Ross says, "Hey, there's a job opening tomorrow. We haven't posted it yet, but if you get here first, I'm sure it's going to be yours." The machine shop in town. So he's all excited. He gets up the next morning, gets in his truck, and she's posted this thing on the passenger side of his old beat up pickup truck. Jesus, others, yourself. So he's on his way into town. He's feeling pretty chipper. He's going to finally get a job after being out of work for 3 months. And he's feeling good. So he picks up this hitchhiker. And it turns out that the hitchhiker, he picks up this hitchhiker, and the hitchhiker notices a sign and kind of mocks the sign. He says, "What, do you really believe this?" Hitchhiker's obviously he's had it rough, and he learns through dialogue that the hitchhiker has also been out of work. But guess what? He's also a machinist looking for work. So now he's come face to face with the reality. Does he tell this guy about this job opening? Because he asked him point blank. This hitchhiker says, "Hey, do you know any jobs in town?" And he says, "No." And right then he knows, oh my gosh, I don't really believe this. I don't believe what I've got posted in my truck. So he lets the hitchhiker out, and he feels terrible about it. And he goes around and racked with guilt, and he picks him up and he takes him to the machine shop and actually gives him the job that was supposed to be his. Now he's got to go back and explain to his wife what happened. And she gives him this whole thing about, hey, the Lord provides for those who provide for themselves. And he's still out of work. Well, in the end, the hitchhiker that got his job ended up being so good at what he does that they got a bigger contract. And then he ends up going out, and he finds out from his buddy that what he had done. So he goes out and starts to look for a job for him without him even knowing about it. And as it turns out, all three of them end up working at the machine shop together. It's about a 20-minute film.
Wow.
Has a great ending. And I'd like to maybe even remake it, but I'd probably do a lot better job now than.
That's awesome. So how long did it take you to make it?
It took me a whole summer because I was the camera and sound guy. And I mean, I literally it was a 3-man crew. And
How did you convince people to come be actors?
Well, BYU acting school, anybody will, be in front of the camera.
Okay.
So, because actors need a reel, they need something to
show,
something to
So
show.
who comes in and buys it?
Concordia Publishing. I send it off to a couple of places thinking I'm never going to sell this. And that wasn't the intent necessarily. If I can and the guy, I get this call, "Hey, we'd like to buy your film. Do you want to do a residual royalty payout, or do you want to just do an outright purchase?" I didn't trust that they'd pay a royalty. So I said, "Let's just do an outright buy." And he said, "Well, how much do you want for it?" Thank heavens I did not say a word after that. Because I was going to say, "Well, I'd like to get my production cost. I can buy another rundown Camaro. I can get my car back, and then I can pay my dad back the, $1,500 that I borrowed from him or what." And that was more meaningful to me to be able to pay him back than anything. But So he then named I said, why don't you guys make an offer and I'll just, counter if necessary. And he made his offer and
How much was it? Come on.
It's just
What was the
40
offer?
years.
well, it was a lot of money back then. I mean, to you guys, you make that here in a day probably, but
What, like 60,000?
no, it's like 40 grand.
Oh my gosh.
That's a day and a half for me. Just so you know. Yeah. Well, thanks to my investing and education that I've gotten from
I've
Andrew
got an
Graham
amazing,
at
I've got
event
an
as well.
amazing nephew.
You sold that for 40 grand.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I was just, sophomore and I realized I got lucky, and I got in a little bit of trouble because the administration said, hey, you're not here to make money with the films you make. So
Yeah, of course.
So like
School.
the school wasn't like proud of you. They were mad at you.
they were, that was really kind of
Business
weird.
school would have been happy with you. The Marriotts would have been like,
Bravo.
bravo. Film school.
But it was fun. I got to pay my dad back, and then I actually paid the actors, and I paid him scale. I paid him SAG scale, Screen Actors Guild scale. Back then, it was like $380 a day, and they were thrilled with that.
How many chicks did you get after you got that 40 grand?
I
Were
was-
you like
that
the
was-
big man on campus after that?
there's an interesting, and this is actually a true story. There was a teller that I thought was really hot. Anyway,
Bank teller?
bank teller.
Okay.
And she wouldn't give me the time of day. I asked her out a couple times.
And then he came and dropped the check.
No, it's serious. She said to me, so what you studying? I said, I'm film major. She goes, well, and she asked me, let me know when you're pre-med.
She said that.
And she kind of smiled. She says, I'm just kidding. She says, but not really, but not really.
Oh my gosh.
And so it's like, seriously? And so I could never so when I got that check, I'm serious. You guys, this is so, we got to cut this out. But
No
when I got
way.
the check,
Juicy.
I waited in line. I made sure that she was there. And I waited in line. And I was saying, okay, please be her window that opens next. And it wasn't. So I had to go back and like fake putting a signature on it. Oh, you go ahead of me. And then I got back in line and then her window opened up. How it works. There's 3 or 4 people waiting there. And then I just nonchalantly slid the check. I just got to make a deposit. And she looked at it. She goes, whoa. And then, what's this from? Oh, I just sold a film and, just a little student film, no big deal. And I so played it down and she was so friendly after that. And Did we go out after that? No, I wanted nothing to do with this person. I just wanted her to see that, hey, filmmakers are people too.
That's right. She's a real idiot. That's what you get. So I just got an interesting text message from this power broker that I know named Brent. He did some math over there in the booth of what 40,000 is equivalent to in the Biden economy currently right now.
Yeah, what is that?
$134,266.50.
Yeah, it was a lot of money back then for me.
That's a lot of money for. Yeah.
I would
I think the
happily
most
take
my-
that check for a student film.
I think the most my account ever had in it at any one time was, I was thrilled when I had over $200 in that account.
Could you imagine a college kid walking into a bank right now, the $134K from their BYU student film? Oh my gosh. You're like, pre-med what, bit?
It's like, I was stunned though at
Dang.
the professor's reaction because it's like, instead of like, had I been like at USC or AFI, American Film Institute, or any of those, they would have gone, yeah, that's awesome. Let's do this again. But it's like, we have to examine this policy because
Oh my gosh.
it's like,
Oh my goodness.
Luckily, they changed about 3 years ago to where they're not like that anymore.
yeah.
I'm just kidding. They probably haven't.
So-
Wow.
What was next though? I mean, you kind of got your first taste of what it was like. You got your first taste of success.
Did we
right?
ask where the story came from? Like the actual.
The story was just in my head. It was just
Really?
Yeah, it just came out.
And where did joy come from? Where did you learn that again? The acronym?
I saw that same like little rendering from a primary class
Wow.
that some kid had done.
Holy crap.
Big J
Cool.
with Jesus, and underneath it, big, O for others, second, and Y yourself, third. JOY.
I mean, I know our family history. Like,
I still
there's no
have it,
machine shop in our family history. Like, the machinist thing, like maybe Detroit? Did that come from Detroit?
I have no idea.
When
Now
you were on your mission in Detroit, I mean, that was still the tail end of.
Oh, this is too much pressure. I don't know, Cam. Now he's pressure. I have no idea where these come from.
It's cool.
Cam's always trying to analyze what's in my head.
It's true.
He does give me free therapy.
Very analytical.
I get free therapy from Cam all the time.
I think it's such a cool. You should remake it. I think that would be a really cool little
I still own the story. I probably should.
That'd be cool.
You guys want to invest? What do you think?
Sure.
Let's do it.
I'm in.
All right.
So then what was next then? I mean, you went through school. What was your first job out of school?
I made a couple more films and they were promo films. I loved flying. And so I did a promo film for Rocky Mountain Helicopters. And that was fun to spend the summer doing that and got paid for that. So from then on, it was kind of a paid gig.
Okay.
And I finished up. I didn't go to class a lot. I just went enough to kind of I did get pretty good grades.
Yeah.
But like if you're a photographer, it's all about your portfolio. It's not about what type of an essay, how good you are at writing essays about photography. It's really about
how it should be.
Yeah.
Your body of work.
Yeah.
Exactly. Body of work. So I was just trying to get as much as I could under my belt. And so I really wanted to go. My goal was to be at Disney.
How come?
I think because I knew that my personal morals were not going to be ripped to shreds to the degree that they would be had I gone somewhere else.
Okay.
Plus,
I wasn't going to be.
There was this bank teller.
Yeah, she's an exec at Disney now. And so I actually tried to get in there, and I was able to. I had a friend that was an accountant there, and I thought, well, that's somebody. So he got me on the lot, got me an interview with then the senior production. He was Marty Katz. He was the senior VP of television and features. He oversaw every TV movie and every feature that was going. And Disney was the happening place. I mean, it was in 1985. It was the happening place.
Marty Katz is a huge. I looked at his list of movies.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So he oversaw everything, and we called him Mr. Freeze because he kept his office at 55 degrees all the time. And I didn't know, but I mean, it's cocaine and all that stuff. I mean, that guy goes a mile a minute. Anyway, he didn't have a job for me. There was nothing there. I'd even had these, films and everything, but there was nothing there. He was mostly the type of positions that were available were filled by high school age students that were sons and daughters of producers on the lot.
Okay.
That's what I was competing against. Well, then what happened is I showed others at a fireside down there in California. And this very chill guy comes up to me. He says, hey, I have some friends. I'd love to, help you out. Because I spoke at the fireside and expressed a desire to try to get into the business somehow. And and there were people peppered around, sprinkled into the audience that were in the entertainment industry. And he said, I understand you've been on the lot to see Marty. That's great. Let me see if I can help out. And I'm thinking, what can this guy do? I mean, I just met the senior VP of television features. Who can this guy possibly know?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm living at home. I'm just fresh. I just graduated, living with, Grandma Dory, as Cam knows her, right? Not married. And down in Hollywood thinking, okay, now what am I going to do? And then the very next day I get a call, and it's, I'm supposed to go, and my mom has written the note, and it said, you're supposed to go meet with Mr. Wells and Mr. Eisner at Disney tomorrow at 2:00. Just wait for it. I mean, this is going to, you're going to realize what a complete idiot I am. Okay. So I wonder who they are. So I drive down to Disney from Long Beach. It takes a long time I pull into the security gate. I said, I'm here to see Mr. Wells and Mr. Eisner. And this big security guard laughs at me. He's like, get out of here. I mean, he has that kind of attitude, like, get out of here, kid.
Yeah.
And seriously, no, look on the, I've got a drive on. I don't know what drive on is. That's just a drive on pass.
Okay.
Oh, sure enough. So he says, okay, we'll park straight ahead. And I notice this really tricked out red Corvette. And it's the only covered parking on the whole lot. This is before the dopey building and all the stuff that's there now. It's the only, so this guy must be important, right? Because it says Mr. Eisner and Mr. Eisner's guest. I'm Mr. Eisner's guest. It isn't until I walk into the animation building and I look up Eisner, And it dawns on me, this isn't Eisner, it's Eisner. It's Michael Eisner. He's the president of the friggin' company. And it says office of the president, third floor animation bill. I go up there and all I can think of is, oh my gosh, don't shake my hand because it's so clammy. Please don't shake. So in my very first meeting, I meet Mr. Eisner, Frank Wells, who's the president of the Walt Disney Company, and then Jeffrey Katzenberg walks in. I don't know if you know that name. One of the co-founders of DreamWorks now. And I'm scared.
This is your introduction to the company.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Anyway, we have a great meeting, but on the way home, they've called my house. Remember, this is before cell phones.
Yeah.
Call my house. My mom answers again. And
So
Marty,
did you show them the film?
no,
When
they
you
just
met with them?
No, we talked about, and it turns out that this guy who had given them my name
Yeah.
was the guy that headed up Silver Screen Partners 1, 2, and 3. He was the one that raised billions of dollars for their next 40 films. I'm throwing out a number. I don't know if it's 40 or if it's 80. But Silver Screen Partners, if you look up Silver Screen Partners, that he was the guy that had that. And this is this really chill, unassuming dude who I only had literally a 2-minute conversation with and have never spoken with since, who got me that opportunity. But I still didn't have a job. I remember Frank Wells says, well, look, we don't put pressure on the guys to hire anybody. I'm like, you're right.
Yeah.
But we'll mention we understand you've been in to see Marty. We'll mention to Marty that you've been in to see us, and let's just see what happens. Between leaving that meeting and getting home, Marty had called my house, talked to my mom, and offered me a job. And I was to start the very next day. But here's where it gets crazy. I go into the studio the very next day, and he's brought in all of his executives, his head of production, and they're in the room to meet me because they don't know who I am, and that's freaking them out. Who is this young phenom, right? He must be important. He just met with Katzenberg, Eisner. These are guys that we don't even get in to see.
Yeah.
And Marty starts grilling me. Well, are you related to Michael? Are you
How did this happen?
How did this? And once they ascertained that there was no direct blood relationship, that it was, and I was honest, and I thought, well, no, it's even cooler that I got in because of the stupid little movie I made.
Yeah.
Once they determined that there was no relationship, they were so cool and so friendly. They all want to shake my hand when I walked in. But once that was determined, the guys just walked out. They were done. And Marty handed me a piece of paper, says, well, welcome to Disney. Do you know how to run a copy machine?
Wow.
And I was the coffee boy and the copy boy, and I was the gopher, and it was the lowest job on the lot that you can have. I ran scripts around here and there. I took, and I was thrilled to be there because Marty said, I want you to read every memo that comes in and every memo that goes out on every production. And that's where I started to learn things, So anyway, that's how I got into Disney.
So then how long were you in that position and what came after?
Well, I think I learned when I was at Disney that I really didn't want to be, I was on a studio executive track at that point. I would have been, and to this day, I'm convinced I would have been probably a mediocre to pretty good studio executive, but I didn't want to be a studio executive. I wanted to be a filmmaker.
Okay.
I had worked on one summer on a movie on the original Footloose movie that came to town. It was in 1980. And so I watched Herbert Ross, who was a very renowned director. And, there was this young up-and-coming actor named Kevin Bacon and Sarah Jessica Parker. I mean, these were all, they didn't know. This was before they were famous, right?
Yeah.
And so I learned working on Footloose that I wanted to be a filmmaker.
Okay.
But it wasn't until I got to Disney that I realized I don't want to be a studio executive. I want to be a filmmaker. So I left Disney and went back out and just started freelancing.
Okay.
After I was only there for about a year.
Okay. And so what was your first, did you have a film that in the industry kind of put you on the map?
I did a whole bunch of short films. I worked on some of the early, these are old. These are the films that you guys cringe at if you were to watch. These are the old seminary films. These were the best of the worst of them. How do I say that?
I think I'm still floored that Called to Serve hasn't been redone yet.
Yeah, we should do it. We should,
right?
Yeah.
I've been saying that for years. He did Called to Serve. It was funny. Half of that is filled with my cousins. It's awesome. But I'm like, I loved that when I was younger.
Yeah.
Like, I watched that a ton getting ready for my mission. I'm like, I think it'd be so cool to remake that every 10 years.
Yeah,
Right?
we should. I'd love to. I've tried to convince him to do that.
Really?
Yeah. But I don't know. It was just a series of short. Again, it was just an opportunity to learn. So it was these were short films that were kind of instructional in nature. And since I'd been at Disney and worked kind of at the BYU, there was some connections that I had, and so I started directing those. And then I got my first feature break. And a feature film, feature film by definition is a movie that is worthy of playing in a theater, basically. Okay. You hope so. Now there are a lot of feature films made that don't make it. They end up just playing on TV or and it was called Just Like Dad, and it was with Wallace Shawn. If you saw Princess Bride, he's the Sicilian, the inconceivable. So he's one of the lead characters, and that was probably my first. That was back when the Disney Channel was just starting up, and they were acquiring outside independently produced films, and so we were making films with a company called Lucadia. And these were small budgets. They were usually about $1 million or slightly under. But one sale.
Small budget. What was a normal budget back then? Like what would have been considered a large budget?
Film.
Well, the Disney Channel, just the Disney Channel movie back then, they were spending $4 to $5 million.
Okay.
We were making these for about $1 million, and we were making them right in Salt Lake City. And so we did a few of those and sold those to Disney, and then that led on to other, a little bit bigger, better budgets, and then working directly for the channel as well as Nickelodeon, and on and on and on. So there was a period of about 15, 18 years where it was just nonstop working now as a director on mostly what you would consider, either comedic or family friendly films, whether that be Nickelodeon or Disney or Columbia TriStar.
What are some of the most recognizable names or of stuff that you did in that time frame?
Well, there was a period where I was also doing episodic television, and so
that's a big word. Episode. I've never heard it been called that before. Episodic television, just episodes.
Yeah, that's just
sorry.
I'm old school.
Everyone here is.
I'm old school. Yeah, you guys call it, what's the streaming? And I guess you don't have to get wet, right? Right? I do know what streaming is, Cam.
A grandpa joke. I love it. Oh, wow.
Anyway, where were we?
We were talking about movies you've done, like so Wish Upon a Star, like.
Yeah, Wish Upon a Star.
Because if you look back at some of the names were like Power Rangers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Like, was that during this time?
Yeah, I did a couple of these smaller movies, and then I got into the episodic television.
Yes, of course. SAG. That's Screen
Actors Guild.
Yes, of course.
And then I got my
Joy.
My DGA card. That's Directors Guild of America.
Oh, that's a step up.
Yeah, it is.
It's when you're the boss.
But we didn't have any, Power Rangers. They were covered in colored plastic, so we didn't have any real like breakout stars that were famous. Ninja Turtles, they're in the costume the whole time. So who are they? They're just a bunch of Chinese stuntmen, but and they're awesome. And I love working with these guys, by the way. This was Jackie Chan's crew, and they are frigging awesome to work with. They were the most fun.
Doing the Ninja Turtles?
Yeah, well, Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles.
Okay.
They are just the most awesome, professional, fun.
So like with Jackie Chan on set?
No. Oh. They'd work with Jackie Chan in the off season, when we weren't shooting the series, because, he can't. Jackie Chan, the guy's he's an amazing stuntman, whatever. Your body's going to wear out. You can only make so many movies a year, right? You can't keep a crew busy constantly. So his crew is always going out to martial artists.
Okay.
They're martial artists, and they're working on various films. But their staple at that point was Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles and those kind of things. So
was there a specific film? Well, first of all, what's the difference between a film and a movie?
Boy, I wish I knew the answer to that. Honestly, I mean,
I think film is what the.
it's just a term. I mean, I don't know
I
that.
think we call them movies. The people that make them call them films.
It's like musicians call them like albums and tracks. Like that's like
yeah, songs and.
yeah.
Ask somebody in film school. I don't know. I mean, I got myself.
Is it offensive if I call what you've done a movie?
No, not at all.
Okay.
You can't offend me. I've been called a lot of things. I'm not.
So on one of your sets,
Why don't you try and offend me?
I'd love to. Was there ever an actor or an actress that was like really famous? You were kind of like, oh wow, like either starstruck a little bit or nervous to work with?
Oh yeah, for sure. But I realized that, look, everybody, puts on their pants one leg at a time, right? So I got this call. Well, those might be painted on. That's true. But I got a call literally the night before. It was a commercial. They were developing Provo Canyon, and somebody put together a series of spots with, there were 3 spots. One featured Marie Osmond. That's not the one I'm talking about. And then and one featured Robert Redford, and the other one featured both of them together. And the director on it was freaking out. He didn't know if he could work with Redford because he just was so enamored by his body of work, as was I, as am I. I mean, he's an amazing talent, right? And so he said, "Can you direct this? I'm going to send you over the script. Can you do this tomorrow?" And I said, "Sure." So I just did it, and
wow.
And he was late. He's late for everything. Redford's always late, makes everybody wait. But we had a great time, he said, "What do you want me to do?" I said, "Well, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking that." Remember, I'm not directing him in terms of his performance. This is a 30-second spot.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of giving him some direction on blocking, where he's going to ride his horse and where he's going to walk through the river and how he's going to walk with these kids. And there's some Native American kids in the mix. But I just figured, you know what? He's just a guy and I'm just a guy. And we had some fun, as we were scouting out the locations. I asked him about some of his earlier movies, but ones that he didn't expect. I asked him about The Great Waldo Pepper because I loved it because it's about flying, right? He said, "Nobody asked me about that movie."
Yeah.
And we had a great conversation. We had a lot of fun with it. And then I was able to go out and ski with him. He's a pretty good skier, actually.
That's awesome.
You skied with Robert Redford?
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he sent me a pass and he says, "Come on up sometime." And I didn't think I'd actually connect with him, but he happened to be there. And so we skied a couple of runs together, and he was a pretty good skier.
So who is someone that we'd be surprised, one for good and one for bad, on like who they actually are as opposed to like the characters they play?
In terms of misbehaving?
Yes. Or like someone
Maybe
that's
we
nice.
think they're nice, but they're really.
Gosh, you're asking me to dish on somebody. I'm going to get in trouble here.
Course.
Well, you know what? Katherine Heigl, okay, she has a reputation. It's no secret. She has a reputation of being really difficult to work with.
Yeah.
I did not find that to be the case. Now, maybe that was because she was young, and her mother kind of has that same, Nancy has that reputation of, she now produces for Katherine by virtue of relation,
Right.
But Katherine was a sweetheart. She has a definite way she wants to do things. But when people are difficult, a lot of times it's just good to take a step back and say, okay, what is it you want? What do you think?
Yeah.
And if your goals align, that's fine. Who cares who gets the credit for the idea? You just want the scene to work, right?
So being in that world, did it change your perception of being famous? Like, were you wanting to become famous at any time? And then once you experienced maybe some of them, you're like, okay, I don't want to ever
That's
see
a great question. That's a great question. And I don't really get asked that very often. But it's a great question. And yeah, there was a point where fame might have been an enticement for me. Mm-hmm. But I really, honestly, especially for kids, I would not wish fame on anybody, especially kids.
I think being famous would be the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
You guys have no idea. I mean, I'm speaking from the standpoint of somebody who is not famous. I've had my 15 minutes, here and there. I've had a couple of little 15-minute episodes.
Yeah.
There's that episode word. I'm sorry, Ken.
Episodic adventures.
Yeah. Yes. I've had episodic fame moments. But really, I mean, there are filmmakers that are far more noteworthy, far more noted for what they've done with a much broader body of work than I recognize that. And there are times where I'm envious of that, but they're fleeting. I've worked with a lot of kids who were basically just kids. And think about just for a minute about what it would be like to be, say you're 14, 15 years old. You've gone out to Hollywood and you're going to be there for pilot season. That's when all the new shows are starting up and you're trying to get a job cast in a pilot. What happens when you get cast and then that becomes, they buy the first series of episodes. Now all of a sudden, as at 12 years old, you're the breadwinner in your family.
That would be crazy.
Think about what that does to, once the series starts to air and it becomes popular, what does that do to your friendships and your relationships?
Yeah.
Those they're genuinely your friends tend to pull away because they don't want to be perceived as a hangers-on. They're not hanging on to your coattails.
Yeah.
Those who aren't your friends want to have everything to do with you. They want to come and hang out with you. They want to be seen with you. They want to do Snapchats and all that. How do you say Snapchat? They want to do all this stuff, right? What happens then when the series ends? Very few child actors ever transitions into adulthood acting. I mean,
oh yeah, just look at the list of the Disney stars that are now.
Yeah. I mean, Kurt Russell is one of the only ones who really pulled it off. I mean, he was a young Disney child actor and he was able to pull it off. So I have the same it's almost a rote from memory, conversation I have with the parents. And there's nothing that says I'm supposed to do this, but I just feel like an obligation as a parent. I say to these parents, look, we're about to start, your little Johnny's in this series and he's just starting off. Or we've just cast your son in this movie and this is his first movie, or maybe he's done some community theater and now he's in the big time. He has the potential. You've got to still make him take out the trash. Okay. He's still got to make his bed.
Right.
You've got to have a relationship with him and you've got to help him understand that this is temporary. This is fleeting. It's not going to last. And those who cling to their families, they're the few that survive.
Interesting.
Well,
but it messes up your whole psyche.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I'm around a lot of athletes, and when an athlete retires, I mean, these are grown men and women, and it really messes with them. When they retire and they're just done, it's like, what do I do now? So imagine that at 12 to 15 years old when you're already like hormonal, super concerned about what everybody thinks about you.
Right. Your brain isn't even fully formed until 28 or something?
Yeah. And then when the season's going, everyone's waiting on you hand and foot, right? And then all of a sudden it's just like over.
It ends.
Oh my
And
gosh.
people don't return your phone calls anymore. The agency that would bend over backwards for you if you're with creative artists, if you're with CAA or William Morris or one of these big agencies, and they, when you go into their offices, they've got catered food, they've got your name, they escort you everywhere. They treat you like gold. That's because you are their gold.
Right.
Yeah.
But there comes a time when you're no longer valuable to them and they won't even return your call. I'm glad I never had to go through that.
Yeah.
I was never famous enough or had that much capital to, I was kind of shown the door, I think, with, certain political events that happened, but that's all in the past. So.
But that's a good story, and I did want to touch on it because I think it's fascinating that I think people would love to kind of hear what happened because you were still with Disney Nickelodeon, right? Is that who you're working with? I mean, you know what I'm alluding to.
I was kind of in what we call the rotation. I was in the mix of a number of directors that were just going from kind of project to project.
Right.
And things were going well. We had a couple of movies that have been in their all-time top 10.
Like what?
That just continue to air year after year. We just came out of Halloween, so Phantom of the Megaplex is one.
Okay.
That they've been airing.
I still see Wish Upon a Star pop up.
Yeah, it still plays, and Paper Brigade still plays from time to time.
Right.
And
that was there was another fan. That was Evan Rachel Wood, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
No, that was Little
Secrets. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
My wife and I were on holiday down in Mexico, and we saw it in Spanish.
Really?
Where it comes on TV, and I go, "Oh, cool! Yes,
That is
another
pretty
9
cool.
cents. I get about 9 cents every time it airs." Hey, 9 cents adds up, man.
It does.
So when you said political events, this is, I assume you're referring to Prop 8 in California, right?
Yeah, that was kind of a rough time.
Can we go into that a little bit?
Sure. We can try.
So
I guess we can laugh about it now, right?
You had done some stuff for the church already, right? Up to this point, but now you're fully in, California working with, Disney, Nickelodeon, etc. Right. But 2008, right? Is that when that was? Or was it earlier? I want to say it.
Gosh, I should look it up to be accurate. But I remember, but I guess to set the stage a little bit, it wasn't like I wasn't one to wear my religion on my sleeve. But if anybody asked, I wasn't going to shy away from it either.
That was 2008. So
people would always, on Friday when we'd wrap, typically we work a 5-day week. So when we wrap on Friday, what are you guys going to do for the weekend? We're going here, we're going there. Do you want to come? Whatever. Because most of these times, a lot of times you're filming on location. So you're kind of sequestered with this crew in whatever hotel you're staying at. In this case, about this time, I think I was just down in Los Angeles. And, well, what are you doing? And I'd always get a laugh. I got to teach a Sunday school class,
Right.
Really? What, you teach Sunday school? Like, are you a pastor or something?
Yeah.
No, it's just my job. I wouldn't say calling because they wouldn't understand.
Sure.
It's just my job. I'm part of a church where we have no paid clergy. We all have our jobs, and that's my job right now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. And then they kind of snicker, it's like, seriously, this guy's a director and he teaches Sunday school. Okay, whatever. But word gets out, they find out that you're they called us Mormons in the day. Can we use the term Mormon anymore?
No, absolutely not.
But everybody knew that I was a member of the church, and that wasn't a secret. Though I didn't really go out of my way to publish it. If somebody wanted to talk about it, I wasn't going to shy away from it either. And they also knew how the church's position in Southern California, how the church felt about Proposition 8. So what
is Proposition 8 in case people forget? What was it?
It was basically it was Prop 22 it was
Prop 22.
Was it Prop 22?
Same-sex marriage, Prop 22 in 2000.
It was basically the wording was defined as marriage between a man and a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Back then there were civil unions, and I'm going to slaughter this because I've forgotten a lot.
I'm reading through it right now.
About, but Prop 8 basically defined legally marriage between a man and a woman, and the members of the church back there were really at the tip of the spear in walking doors, walking door to door and posting signs, and there was a lot of stuff that happened on that was very
well. The church the church got involved directly.
Well,
right?
basically, they wrote a letter to the folks down there and says, "Do all you can to support this initiative."
Okay.
Right.
And to their credit, even members of the church who disagreed with supporting it, they supported it, and they went out and they knocked doors and they put posters out. Yes on 8, and of course it got dubbed as it was H. It was hate. I can still see the signs, but signs were stolen, and it was an ugly time. And anybody that had donated the campaign was outed, and they were put on Google Maps. So I can tell you literally hundreds of stories of people who had donated to Proposition 8, and then they were outed, and their business suffered dramatically. Some had lost their jobs.
I know a guy that went to jail, lost everything. An attorney. He was an attorney. Yeah. Kamala Harris came after him directly. She was the attorney general at that time.
Yeah.
He lost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And signs were stolen. There's tens of thousands of documented police reports that document stolen signs. I remember one of the guys electrified his sign, and then his neighbor tried to steal it and burned his hands, and the neighbor sued him, and the neighbor, I think, prevailed in court because anyway. So it was a dark time, and so basically I said this probably isn't a good fit anymore. Disney. Now remember when I worked at Disney, when I started there, I was the only straight member on my staff. When I worked in story development, I was the only straight guy. I got along fine with everybody. We all got along great because these are, look, we're in a creative business, and if you can create, if you can do your job effectively, I don't, care what your political affiliation is or sexual orientation. And, but I was basically said, you know, I mean, they basically said, you know what, this isn't a good fit anymore. So you're done. So I was done. So I thought, well, it's, you know, when one door, you know, closes, another
Now,
one
when they
opens.
say you're done, is it like,
They just kind of stopped hiring me, basically.
but like, was it to a point where, hey, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, everyone else down there, like, don't hire this guy? Like, were you put on the list not to get hired?
I can't say definitively I was put on some list, but since I was already in a very small group of people that were doing family-friendly films,
Yeah.
I think that was the vibe.
Okay.
But I can't, you know, I got to be very careful. I can't
For
say
sure.
that
Yeah.
there was some blacklist or something. But I was told by an executive in no uncertain terms, this just isn't a good fit anymore. Because there was a project I was up for, and I'd already done a couple of successful projects with these guys. And all of a sudden, the phone wasn't ringing. And so, but, you know, it happens and life goes on.
Yeah. Interesting. So then what?
Crazy.
So then what did you transition to then?
I basically, you know, we were living in Utah at the time. I had a little apartment down in Santa Monica. So I was just flying back and forth. And so we closed up shop in the apartment down there. And after that, I just focused on work around here. I thought, well, I'll get back into documentary work, or maybe there'll be some independent work that I can do. And, you know, after that,
Okay.
it just, then the church called and said, hey, we've got a couple of special projects. If you'd be interested, we'd like to start filling our own theater with some material. We'd like you to pitch us some stuff. And so that led to some other opportunities.
So what were some of the things that you worked on that you helped do for the church after that?
There was you guys have been to the Legacy Theater downtown? Mm-hmm. You know, it's a big screen, beautiful theater. I mean, as theaters go, there's not many theaters like it. It's a beautiful 500-seat theater. And they'd been running a couple of movies in that, you know, that I can't, like Testaments, and I can't remember all the movies that they were made just for the Legacy Theater.
Sure.
So
I mean, Legacy was the first one, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Legacy was the first one, and I think Testaments might have been the second one. And I just felt, even though my training was really in scripted narrative work, I was getting more and more interested in documentary at that point. And I just felt like, gosh, we ought to just do a documentary about Latter-day Saints all over the world and let them tell their own stories. And by virtue of hearing those stories, learn about who we are. And it should be kind of geographically and ethnically diverse, because that's who we are as a church, right? I mean, we are a worldwide church. And so that gave rise to this idea that I pitched, and it became Meet the Mormons. We didn't call it Meet the Mormons.
That was your idea. I mean, that was concept. Everything was you.
Yeah, pretty much. But
that's awesome.
But
that's
where do ideas?
That's my uncle.
Well, but where do ideas come from? You know, so
sure.
Your heart.
Yeah, or maybe a higher power. I mean, who is it that really wields that hockey stick there, Cam? Is it you, or is that the man upstairs?
It's the man upstairs, for
there
sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
Who is it that gave you the great talent for barbecue? Do you think that was you?
John Lewis. No, yeah. I mean, it was just like your story as a kid. I mean, has to be fun, right? You have to love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the big man definitely had a hand in it. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there were some ideas that came into my head that I honestly, guys, I honestly can't take credit for them. I can't. See,
I would love to hear a couple stories. So I don't know if I'm allowed to tell this story or not. We can cut it out if not, but I remember something that happened here in Bam Bam's when you were in production, or as post-production. Is that the right term? Like the movie had been made.
Yeah, that's post-production.
But thank you.
The film.
It's a movie, damn it. Okay. And I remember you came in for lunch one day, and I saw you on a pretty heated phone call.
Really?
Uh-huh. And it's so interesting because I remember you coming back in. I'm like, was that about? Because I knew you had finished Meet the Mormons, and that was coming out. But I remember hearing Kickboxer a few times.
Yeah, I guess okay.
And I remember asking, like, so what's going on? And you just said, well, there's somebody above me that does not think that a fighter or a martial arts person should be in Meet the Mormons. Am I getting the story right?
Well, that a typical good quote unquote relief society sister should be a kickboxer, something along those lines, right? Yeah. Yeah. And I felt like,
because you were pretty mad.
Well, yeah, it's true. We had a vigorous exchange of ideas.
I remember feeding you pork while you were on the call to keep you like
Calm
energized. No, just to keep you in the fight.
Keep me from reaching through the,
Just to keep
well,
the
we get
levels up.
passionate about these stories, and in this case, we'd already made it and it was done. And there were a lot of people that when we tested it, it tested well. We test these stories with audiences before we ever release them. And the kickboxer actually, in truth, guys, all the stories tested well.
For sure.
For different reasons.
Yeah.
There's the Navy coach, then there's the kickboxer, anyway. Yeah, there was this whole discussion, but fortunately, wisdom prevailed, again, above my pay grade. And they said, we think this should stay. And it was actually Elder Eyring.
I was going to say, didn't you have to go over that person's head?
Yeah, and usually we try not to do that. We try to work in councils, we work with committees, but creative by committee, I'll just say flat out, creative by committee does not work. It's never worked. But yet we have to work in councils, and we have to somehow find a way to work through that and make it work. And so in this particular case, this story as well as others were kind of protected by, I think Elder Eyring, this is before he was in the first presidency, Elder Eyring knew of what I was kind of going through. And he said, how you doing? And I said, well, we've got this issue. And he said, what's really the issue? And I was trying to represent both sides. And he just thought about it. He said, well, I think let me just kind of take care of it. And so he basically sent a little memo. If any, Meet the Mormons is finished. Picture is locked. If you have any further questions, reach me, reach out to my office.
That's power right there.
And that basically shut everybody down. And there were thousands of discussions.
Did you send a little winky emoji to the guy? It's like, hey, suck it.
Well, he had said some things that were not quite accurate, and we had to call him out on it. But it all got resolved. I mean, I'm really giving you kind of the vanilla.
Oh, yes, you are. And that's okay. That's okay. So what do you find to be the biggest differences between what you do or what you did in LA or, working in that world, making movies, making episodes and trying to do the same thing within the church?
It's completely different mindset for sure. Because you are dealing with these committees, and the church, like any other large organization, has several bureaucratic levels, and that's just the way it is. And that makes it very difficult. You don't have definitely there's not the creative freedom and autonomy that you would find. But I guess for me, I've just said to myself, I'm willing to accept that given the material that we're working on.
Have you ever turned something down just because things are just too bureaucratic? And
sure.
I am so done with this. And can you do that and not worry about losing your
Well, I just
gig?
did. I just recently did.
Your spot in line almost.
Yeah.
Well, I've been on Book of Mormon, and I've been on all the seasons, and I started off the very first year as there's a rotation. I was the lead director just to get them started, and then I've been in rotation with other directors. And we each kind of do our own episodes. But last year I had kind of the lion's share, and it was Third Nephi. So this is, in terms of Book of Mormon, it doesn't get any more important than.
These are the Book of Mormon videos on YouTube.
Yeah. And again, I get asked a lot, well, why can't they be more like The Chosen, and we'd love to do stuff like that if we could, but we have to be very careful. We have to be very accurate. We can't just run off and guess about what may have happened. So, I mean, there's certain things that we don't know and we have to guess, but we have to kind of fill in the blanks. But, but yeah, there are times where I can turn stuff down and just say, I'm not a good fit for this. I'm going to let somebody else do it. And I just kind of gently back away.
So can I ask, who are the committees that you keep mentioning? Like, is that
Nobody knows.
Well, that's kind of what I'm. It's like, are they general authorities? Is there a department that oversees that? Is it
The
70s?
the answer is yes.
To all.
Yeah, it's large and it's very vast. We have a correlation committee that kind of oversees that. They kind of the watcher over the doctrine to make sure that we're portraying things correctly.
Does he wear a robe?
No,
that would be awesome.
not to work. No, they have a job to do, and I respect that. It's a tough job. I wouldn't want it.
So when you're making one of these, I imagine the script is approved, blah, blah, blah. But if you have an idea, something that you think will really add to it,
it just comes down to,
do you have to like push it up, and how long would that take to get approved? Or is it not even worth trying?
It varies. Sometimes it isn't worth trying, but sometimes it depends on kind of what you've just finished and how much capital you have in the room. If a senior general authority knows your work and knows that and can look you in the eye, I mean, and you can say, and they can say, is this going to work? Blair, is this going to work? And I say, yes, it's going to work. Trust me. Then there's a certain level of trust there. But as you get distanced from projects that were successful, or you're meeting with a whole new group of people, you're starting from ground zero again. Like, right. Who's this guy? I don't know who he is. I don't know if I should trust him. I mean, to Elder Eyring's credit, he once asked me on another unrelated film from the previous one I was just talking about. It was a big budget, and he looked me across it. I went in he interviewed me, and he looked me right in the eye, and he says, now, we're going to be spending about the same amount on this film that we will be to build a small temple. Will it be worth it?
Wow.
And I had to look him in the eye and say, I don't know. That's a decision for somebody above my pay grade. I mean, but it gives you a sense of how purposeful and how important, and how meaningful these projects are to the senior brethren. They want them to hit the mark, and so there's a lot of pressure. I mean, I've actually, fortunately, I haven't had to do this very often, but there have been times where I presented in front of the entire 12.
Wow.
Jeez.
And it's these are amazing men. If I'm awestruck or starstruck, it's not by anybody I've seen in Hollywood. It's these 12.
Interesting.
They're they don't always agree. They have vigorous exchanges from time to time, but they're very deferential. They respect one another. There's decorum, and there's absolute a sense at all times of seniority.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Whoever is senior in the group, when they say this is the way it's going to be, that's the way it's going to be. And and these guys are they're bright, they're smart. I mean, I just feel honored to really be able to hang with any of them for a brief period of time. And I'm not just to be clear, I'm not it's not like I play golf with these guys. It's not like I'm on a first name basis. I mean, I did get to know Elder Holland and Elder Bednar pretty closely. And I think they might wave at me across the parking lot. They might recognize me, and they might say, hi, Blair. But other than that, I'm not, don't think that I'm, it's not like I'm buddies with any of these guys. But I don't envy their position.
Oh man, that'd be almost an impossible position.
They're under a microscope, everything they do.
Yep. So is there a project that I would imagine Meet the Mormons had to be probably your favorite, maybe just because it was yours, but is there something more recently that you've really enjoyed working on?
Well, in terms of fulfilling Meet the Mormons, because I was on it from beginning to end, and it was one of those, in fact, it's the only, I think, church project. I could be wrong, but I think it's the only project the church has done that actually went full-blown theatrical, right, and actually was in all the theaters, and it was number one at the box office when it came out. Now, it wasn't competing against much, but for a religious documentary to be number one,
cool. Pretty good.
And it made a lot of money, and we donated it to charity, and it was fun to be able to, Elder Stevenson, I was there when he handed the check to the American Red Cross. I said, can I see the check? And he showed it to me. It was cool.
What was the check?
It was just proceeds from.
No, how much was the check?
It was, I don't know, it was a couple $1 million.
Okay.
I'd never seen a check for $1 million, a couple $1 million. Right. I'd never seen a check like that.
That would be fun.
Wow.
I thought,
So I have a totally side question off topic. When you're directing, how often when you're filming, are you filming in sequential order?
Never.
So is it you just film based on like the scene, like the, I don't know, like the set basically? So you'll film every scene from that set so you're not having to kind of come back and forth to it? Or if you go to a location, you film every scene from that location?
Exactly. That's what you do. It's been said that you really shoot a schedule more than you shoot. I mean, making a movie is all about, well, I shouldn't say it's all about, but in large measure, it's about logistics. So in Wish Upon a Star, for example, there's a lot of scenes that take place at the high school and at our lead character's house. Well, and then within the house, there's the scenes in the kitchen, there's the scenes in her bedroom, there's the scenes in the front yard, there's the scenes in the backyard. So, and there's also night scenes, and there's also day scenes. Mm-hmm. So we shoot it completely out of order. And that's what makes it so much fun and yet makes it, from a continuity standpoint, difficult. So
like, that's what I thought. How hard would that be for an actor? Like, you have this scene, which is this emotion.
Exactly.
This scene has, you don't get to experience, the actors don't get to experience the emotion or the sequential order of what's happening. So they just have to like pick up.
That's right. That's right.
That would be so hard.
Yeah,
it is. And that's why I have such respect for actors who really, who have developed their craft. And that's what the discussion's all about. Like, to your point, let's say you have a scene where it takes place in the kitchen and parents yell at a kid and her daughter, let's say, and she runs out of the house crying. And now she runs into the arms of her boyfriend who's waiting in a Jeep out front. I'm just making this stuff up.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know. Let's say you shoot the exterior scene first before getting the full context of the scene. And yet when it's cut together, it feels like it just happened in sequential order, right? And it's even trickier when you're talking about stunts or car chases because now sometimes you have to shoot those in order because certain things happen in the context of the stunt that can't be repeated. And so you have to kind of let it build upon itself. But movies are all, you're shooting. So in the case of Wish Upon a Star, going back to that, we shot all the bedroom scenes together. We shot all the kitchen scenes together, and we go to the high school, shoot all those scenes together. And there's wardrobe changes.
Well, and your job to make sure that they are, keeping that emotion or the energy, that you can identify that it does feel consistent. Like that would be.
Well, you have to know everyone's playbook. It's like the quarterback, right?
Yeah, you have to know the routes.
Every play. Yeah, you have to know everyone's job.
Yeah,
it's the one person that has to know everyone's job, and I mean that'd be crazy.
It's an interesting position because you have to. And again, I can't speak to how other directors work. I don't know that they do it this way, and I wouldn't say that this is the only way you should do it.
Yeah,
but at least for me. Because I recognize that I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. I'm really not. I'm not particularly a smart guy. But I do work really hard.
Yeah.
I have to, when I have the script, I've seen it on my mind screen already. I've read the script. It's not quite there, but until it's cast and I've been in the location and I've seen, the props and I've seen all the elements, there will come a point usually right before the movie's made where I can sit down and I can play the entire movie in my head. I don't have it memorized, but I can read the script and I know, okay, Katherine Heigl is going to go across. She's going to say this line and she's going to stand up and then she's going to pick up this prop and she's going to go over here and she's going to say this to her mother and she's going to go out the door. Now, that doesn't mean we shoot it that way, but what it means is that I have a concept in my head for how I'd like to shoot it. And then once we get the actors in the space and we get some other people that I recognize are more talented than myself, they're going to come up with better ideas than I have. But in case they don't, I've got a fallback position.
Yeah.
And so it's like when you lay out a store, Cam, you know where your ovens are going to be, you know how you want the flow to be, you know where you want to take the orders, right? You know where the vending machines, and you kind of envision how it's going to flow, right? It rarely turns out exactly that way.
Totally. That's catering. Every catering job, it's like, the first thing you do is look at the room. How many people are coming in? Are they all coming in together? Are they coming in, apart?
And you're thinking about the stuff that nobody else thinks about because that's your job, right?
That's why they hired me for Trek last year. Jerks. But I did save them a ton of time. You should have seen how it was laid out.
Trek. If you were catering, I would go on Trek.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really even get to cater. I was just there because they're like, you know how to serve it's like 1,200 kids or whatever. And oh my gosh, they had it the way they had it lined up. I shaved an hour off every meal easy. But it sounds like a joke, but it's a real thing. I mean, the way everything flows, it makes a huge difference.
It does. And I got to tell you, I'm going to diverge for a second. Diverge. So my son was in a serious car wreck, and we thought we were going to lose him. And he was up at IHC. Murray, yeah. And he was in the ICU for an extended period of time. And Cam brought in some barbecue for all the doctors and nurses.
Tell that story.
It was so cool. I mean, because just by him doing that, it was not like the doctors and nurses wouldn't have already paid great attention to his every need, but just that they were fed and cared for, it gave me that assurance, okay, they're going to give my kid a special treatment.
For sure.
And they were great up there. They were awesome. And food is important, guys. I mean, I'm telling you this, right?
Yeah.
and what it does when you have a good meal, man, it's, in fact, on a movie set, a lot of times the deciding factor for somebody, if they're not quite sure if they're going to come work on your movie, is who's the caterer. I am serious.
Wow.
Really?
I am dead serious. Especially with grips, electricians, and, crew, drivers, especially drivers.
Really?
Who's catering? Yeah. And if they don't like the caterer that you've got, they're going to pass and work on somebody else's project.
Well, that's every meal all day long, right?
All day long.
That one company is doing all the food.
It's important. Food
huge.
is important.
So how, on average, how many times are you having to film a scene?
Usually I'm not one to do a lot of, we call them takes.
Yeah.
I'm not one to do a ton like some directors do, because if you're doing a lot of takes, there's a handful of reasons why, and they're all bad. One is you either have it and don't know that you've got it, so you just keep trying.
Mm-hmm.
Two is you're not communicating clearly with the actor, or you've miscast, all of which are bad.
Yeah.
It's just not going right. So if it's not going right, you have to stop and kind of rehearse and pull back and say, okay, what's not working here? So for me, typically, in episodic television, there'll be times like when I used to do Granite Flats, for example, we'd do one, say, let's move on.
Okay.
That's rare because we usually like to have a backup in case. So that's an extreme, one or two. But a lot of times we'll do 4 or 5, and if we don't have it, now to be fair, there's sometimes technical issues that come up.
Sure.
You have to do something over because of some unforeseen technical issue, or traffic, or some low flying plane, or some siren, or whatever.
Sound that like working out. I mean, I've just done a little bit of TV with barbecue, right? Mm-hmm. And oh my gosh,
yeah,
it's
sounds
unreal.
great.
Like one little thing passes by, and you have to start all over. I could never. I was such a diva after one day of that barbecue pilot. I was like, screw this. Oh my gosh.
That's funny because some actors will do it over and over. Like Wallace Shawn, one of my favorite actors. Again, the
Inconceivable.
Inconceivable.
Yeah.
He was in he will do it 40 times if I ask him. And he'll try some variation on it. Mickey Rooney's another one. You had asked me earlier who was who surprised you?
Yeah.
And I mentioned Katherine Heigl, right?
Yeah.
The other one has to be Mickey Rooney. Okay, so here's a guy who was a child actor and in his teens was the largest box office draw of his day for 10 years. He was the Tom Cruise of his day.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's done, don't fact check this, but I think he's done 500 films.
Whoa, that's a lot.
And I had him on, I worked with him 2 or 3 times. And he can be extremely difficult to work with, but he wasn't with me.
Wow.
Because I just told him how much I respected him and how much, and it's like, dude, you have forgotten more than I will ever learn. So let's just have a great time. And he's gone from, as you might imagine with his age, he used to be able to memorize a whole script in a couple of days, and he wouldn't even bring it to set. He just knew it. But in his later years, like Marlon Brando, he can't memorize anything. But I don't I'm not judging because I can't remember anything. I can't remember.
My gosh,
I can barely remember what I had for breakfast this morning. It was a Monte Cristo.
We went to breakfast together this morning. Yeah, we can't even remember the score after a single point in pickleball, or even who served.
That's right. Did I say
Well, it's
that?
funny. I was watching the Friends documentary, and they would talk about Courtney Cox would hide all of her lines in the fruit bowl.
Oh yeah.
Or like she had like different places on set where she would like hide her script.
No, we do that all the time. Well, like with Mickey Rooney, we'd have to hide his lines in his eye line. If we knew he was going to be looking in a certain direction.
Yeah.
Or if I'm looking at you, if you're an actor, I'd put the line right behind your head and if it's not right, he's not looking at you. It looks kind of funky.
Yeah.
So we had to do that on Phantom of the Megaplex. But what a pleasure to work with. You know, this guy.
He's a legend.
He was married to Lana. No, we got to look it up. Who was he married to? He was married to a lot of different things.
I was going to say.
And he used to leave the set, kind of his departing sage. What was it?
There's a long list.
Yeah, there's a long list of. He would tell us. He would say, "Gentlemen, save your money. Save your money." And he knows from whence he speaks.
Right. So a couple things to kind of wrap up. Well, one, last thing in the film arena. Anything that you're looking forward to right now? Like anything that you're working on or that's in the pipeline right now that you're stoked about?
Well, we did. There's a project that we're just developing right now. It's a documentary series, and we don't have a buyer yet. We're going to be going out with it to a couple of buyers that we have, or relationships that we have. It's going to be documenting the experience of 18 to 22-year-olds who are going into the Anasazi wilderness therapy program.
Wow.
Oh.
And so these are kids that are in need of some significant rehab. We're not talking about like drug rehab. They can't go out there if they're, they've already been through rehab if it's alcohol or drug related.
Some kind of substance.
But they're trying to overcome an addiction, long-term addiction. Or gaming. That's one of the big ones is gaming addictions. And for whatever reason, they're not fully functional in society. So they go out and I'm going to be out with my crew for 50 days in the desert. I can't believe I'm going to because again, like I said before, I'm kind of an old fart. I can't believe I'm going to do this, but we're going to go out and document their experience simultaneous to the experience of their parents back home. Now, it's not a done deal. We don't know we're going to do this, but this one we're working on. But I will say that
that will be really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be cool. We don't know where it's going to air. I've had, it might be Netflix or Hulu or we'll go to National Geographic. We'll go to Discovery and with it and see what happens.
Wow.
That's where it goes from there.
Cool.
Wow. And then last thing, you've got some cool other personal things in your life. You're a pilot. We haven't talked about that. You love to fly.
I'm still alive, I guess. So.
Yeah. So you're good at it. But your kids.
Yeah. Well,
It's so funny. I probably get asked when people find out my last name, it's probably once or twice a month. And I get asked about ballroom dancing.
Yeah.
Like, do you know Casey Treu? Like, that's my cousin. But yeah, tell us about.
Yeah. Well, all my kids, thanks to their mother, I married a dancer. And in fact, the first time.
Not a bank teller.
Not a bank teller. Thank heavens.
She's on her fourth husband right now, I guarantee it.
Yeah.
Just waiting for the big win.
Actually, the first time I saw Cheryl was through the lens of a camera.
Really?
Yeah.
Your wife.
Yeah.
Okay.
She was
Zoomed
dancing.
in at her house. What?
Did I tell you that story? I was doing when I was a student, one of the other films that I worked on was a documentary / promo for the ballroom dance company. And they toured all over the world, and Cheryl was one of their lead dancers at the time. And so I saw her and it's like, oh my gosh, she's cute. I got to get to know her. And she wasn't interested in me at all. And so I had, because she was tall and she wore heels and I was short. And
you showed her a check.
And
she was
actually,
like, hey.
I deposited the check, dang it. And I couldn't pull it up on my phone to show her my balance.
She actually said in her journal, Blair's a nice guy, but I could never date him seriously because he's too short. It's actually in her journal.
So that's funny. That's exactly what I said to Ashley. Like, I knew her for 6 months. I'm like, I would love to date you, but you're too short. big man
Giants
got
among
involved.
us. Giants among us. So she was a dancer, and so to answer your question, yeah, she got all the kids into ballroom dancing, and all of them. We've got 2 boys, 2 girls, and they all went to BYU, went through their team, had a great experience. And they've all been in various forms of competitive ballroom dancing. The ones that, my oldest daughter, Krista, runs a studio up in Davis County, her premier ballroom. And she has, 100 and something kids up there. Wow. And then there's Kyle, who just kind of quit ballroom. He's now kind of in the working sector. He's done with instructing in ballroom. But then there's then Casey, my next son. He and his wife are ranked number 2 in the world right now.
Whoa,
crazy
in 10 dance. So they're just going great guns. They're gone right now. They're in New York even as we speak, and they're going to be in Ohio this weekend, and then they'll be off to some place like Kiev, or they're doing a lot of international travel.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
Isn't that wild? Like you
That's
marry
super
somebody
cool.
that's as good as you at something, and they're both named Casey, by the way. It's Casey and Casey.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, you should have them on your show.
No, it would actually be really cool. I haven't talked to Casey forever.
You should. They've got some fun
That would be really
stories,
neat.
but they've kind of taken off, and it's a tough world in which they're trying to do in a same sense, but in a different way. They're trying to do what I was trying to do,
Yeah.
and they're pulling it off.
It's crazy.
That's awesome. So cool.
Yeah. There's some great stories. And yeah, watching them dance, it's like, it's amazing.
So they are. So my big question to you is, now we're almost done. Do I get my free meal now?
Yes, you do. You do. You have earned it. You have earned it. No, this has been awesome.
So much fun.
So many good stories. And I mean, there's a bunch of stuff I didn't know, but we'll have to do the uncut version one of these days.
Yeah.
Dig a little deeper into some of those stories. But no, this has been fascinating. So
It's been fun to be here.
Thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.